Who is going to win the 2024 election? Let's go here with my official prediction. Will it be Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Let's discuss how I think this election is going to play out. First, let's address the fact that this is going to be a close election. I've thought that from the very beginning. When we look at all of the data that we have available to us, there's a reason why there's so many pollsters out there who are just kind of refusing to really say one way or the other what they think is going to happen. Because the more that we analyze the data, you can make a case that Donald Trump is going to win comfortably. You can make a case that he's going to win in very, very tight fashion. You can make a case that Kamala Harris is going to win very comfortably, or that she is going to win in a very, very tight, fashion. The information's all over the place. You can honestly just cherry pick the data if you wanted to and use it to create your own narrative. That's how all over the place it is right now. But I've been hesitant to make a prediction for that reason. I wanted to wait until I felt like I had enough information to truly definitively say what I thought was going to happen. And while I don't feel as though there's like a rock solid way to say that this is definitely going to happen, I feel like I have enough information now to where I can finally say that with the most information I have available to me, this is where I think we're going. First and foremost, let's talk about how tight this race really is. Here's a clip talk about where the polls are right now.
It's just tight. I guess that we're familiar to a little bit more blue across these battleground states than we're seeing right now. But look, it's historically tight, right? Arizona's the widest margin at +3 for Trump. Georgia +2, +1 in North Carolina, a tie in Nevada. You come over here, I think the biggest shift is we're used to seeing blue down here, less than a point lead for Harris in Wisconsin, a point lead in Michigan. But it's actually red. We got red in Pennsylvania. If you take the average of polls, again, it's so tight. But it's Trump by barely, less than a point in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But the bottom line is this. This has been a historically tight race. It continues to be a historically tight race. And I really have no real concept of who is going to win on Tuesday. If you, the viewer, do know, please give me a call at 718 pollster, and then you could tell me.
For those who are unfamiliar, that's Harry Enton. He does a lot of that kind of coverage on CNN. I think his analysis is actually very valuable. He goes into the data very well as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't really appear to be overly biased to one way or the other. It just kind of presents what he's seeing. And I find his information to be useful, helpful. We're actually going to come back to him here in a little bit. But first, kind of want to make the case for Donald Trump. Why would Donald Trump win this election if he's going to win this election? Well, first of all, let's talk about like this. His popularity right now is higher than it's ever been. It's higher than it was in 2016. It's higher than it was in 2020. He is coasting right now, coming into this election where people are actually less afraid to say that they support him, where we saw that phenomenon more in the last two elections. His supporters have been, out there, very loud, very proud, boisterous. Not that that wasn't the case in the past, but it feels as though it's a lot more overt than it's ever been before. And I think there's a little bit of sympathy going towards Trump this time around, probably because of assassination attempts. And there's probably also other multitude of reasons for that as well. But yeah, the taboo is just not really there the way it was in the past. Inflation has also driven people to Trump because he can come out and say that when I was in office, things cost this much. Now that I'm not in office, things don't cost as much as they used to. They cost more than they used to. And while there are a bunch of different accentuating factors why that is the case, it's politics. You get to just kind of claim whatever you want to in this new era and say whatever you want to say. It doesn't really matter if it's the truth or not. And Trump uses that to his advantage all the time. So, and also for those who care about immigration, Trump has been relentlessly hammering home just how much immigration has changed since he left office. Although I will note that his policies and Biden's policies are not that different, but that doesn't really seem to matter for a lot of people who vote on this issue. Harry Enton, again, as we spoke about before, he made the case a little bit more for Trump. And I want to play that clip for you really quickly here.
28% of Americans, voters, think the country is going in the right direction, is on the right track. And I want you to put that into a historical perspective for you. Okay, what's the average percentage of the public that thinks that the country is on the right track when the incumbent party loses? It's 25%. That 25% looks an awful bit like that 28% up there. It doesn't look anything Like this 42% doesn't look anything like this 28%. So the bottom line is, very few Americans think the country is on the right track at this particular point. It tracks much more with when the incumbent party loses than with it wins. In fact, I went back through history. There isn't a single time in which 28% of the American public thinks the country is going on the right track in which the incumbent party actually won. They always lose when just 28% of the country believes that the country is on the right track.
It is a hard, you are swimming upstream if you're trying to win in this environment. Also, President Biden, on a micro level, a lot of the coverage today is over something President Biden said. On the macro level, what kind of a weight is he on the Harris campaign?
Yeah, so, Joe Biden isn't on the ballot, but he's certainly in the minds of Americans, right? So I went back and I looked, okay, was the successor of the same party when the president's net approval rating was negative at this point, which Joe Biden's most definitely is? He's 15 points underwater. Now, we don't know if Kamala Harris is going to succeed Joe Biden, but we know back in 2008, George W. Bush, his approval rating was down in the 20s. Did a Republican succeed George W. Bush? No. How about in 1968? Lyndon Baines Johnson, his net approval rating was negative. Did a Democrat succeed Lyndon Baines Johnson? No. How about in 52? Harry S. Truman, his approval rating was in the 20s, if not the upper teens. Did a Democrat succeed Harry S. Truman in 52? My memory, no. No, as Kate Baldwin says.
Dianu.
No. Dianu.
Separate.
Well
Close. Wrong time of the year.
Well played.
Dwight Eisenhower, a Republican, succeeded Harry S. Truman. So the bottom line is, for Kamala Harris to win, she'd have to break history, be a Democrat to succeed Joe Biden when Biden's approval rating is way underwater at this point.
Again, it could happen. It just doesn't in his,
So the case for Donald Trump is pretty strong. Let's just get that out of the way. Also, the case for Kamala Harris, Harry Anson did a video on that. I watched it. The summation of it is basically that Kamala Harris is more popular than Donald Trump. And in the times where the more popular candidate was going against the less popular candidate, the more popular candidate won every single time, except for one time. But that one time happened to be Donald Trump. And also that Democrats have been just not represented as well in the polls the last few years, to which to be honest, I found his reasoning a little flimsy for Kamala Harris. Didn't even feel like it was worth putting in, as far as the video clip itself, putting into this explanation here. But other reasons why I think that Kamala Harris does deserve to be stated that she has a chance of winning this election. I mean, Democrats, the one thing that we know about Donald Trump, let's talk about this really quickly. Donald Trump is a historically unpopular figure, and millions of people in this country would crawl over broken glass to vote against him. That is just the facts. And Kamala Harris is, in fact, more popular than the last two Democrats who went against him. She's more popular than Joe Biden. She's more popular than Hillary Clinton. Now, Donald Trump is carrying that same level of unpopularity that he's always had. Now, I know that I said previously that he's more popular now. He's more popular amongst his own voters, against other non-voters, but there are still 55, 60 million people in this country who cannot wait to show up to the polls to vote against Donald Trump on election day. And I'm sure a lot of them already have. And so you combine that with her, not just her approval ratings, the way people feel about her, how people feel about Tim Walz, her running mates, also historic grassroots funding that we saw as soon as she became the nominee back at the end of July. We are talking just not enormous amounts of cash coming into her campaign. That's one thing for it to come from corporations, corporate donors, but these were coming from small dollar donations from just everyday working people. People around the country were genuinely happy, and they were genuinely inspired by the Kamala Harris campaign. I'd never seen anything like what I saw those first few weeks after Biden dropped out and she became the nominee. Now, it also needs to be mentioned that she is going to potentially be the first woman president if she gets elected. There's a lot of women in this country who are very excited about that prospect. And again, unlike Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris doesn't come in with all the baggage that Hillary Clinton came in with. And if we go back to 2016, Hillary Clinton, with as unpopular as she was, and how much of a phenomenon Trump was in the beginning when he first came onto the scene, Hillary Clinton still barely lost that election. 40,000 votes in Pennsylvania, 20,000 votes in Wisconsin, 11,000 votes in Michigan. That was the difference between the 2016 election with Donald Trump winning and Hillary Clinton losing. So it's not like the gap has ever been that insurmountable in the first place. But let's, now that we got all that out of the way, let's talk about the official election prediction. So I've been making a lot of maps on 270 to win.com over the last few months, but this will be the final time that I make one here. First and foremost, let's just establish a couple different things. We are first going to talk about the safe states before we kind of get into the final map. The safe states are the states that that can be categorized as whether or not a candidate will win that state by 15 points or more, 15 percentage points or more. So the first image that we're put up on the screen here, this is our map of all of these safe red states. You can see states like Montana, where I live at, Wyoming, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky, West Virginia. These are all the states that I believe Donald Trump will win by 15 points or more. Put it in the bank. They are absolutely not up for grabs this election cycle. Kamala Harris, don't even bother trying to like win in these places. You have no chance. Donald Trump's already won in these places, as far as I'm concerned. Now, let's also see the safe blue states. It's the exact same thing, but in the opposite direction. We'll put this up here. Now you'll see that we have our northeastern block pretty much filled in. New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey. On the West Coast, you have Washington, Oregon, California, Illinois sitting in the middle of the country. The safe blue states, a lot more electoral votes than the safe red states, gives Democrats an advantage in that sense. So these are the states, again, Kamala Harris is definitely winning. Donald Trump, he can act all day long like he has a shot in New York. He has no shot in New York. That'd be hilarious that he actually has convinced people that he does have a shot in New York. However, these are the safe blue states. Let's move on. So the next batch that we're going to be talking about here are these likely states. Now, these are states that are going to fall between 6% and 14%. So not exactly nail biters, but also not super safe either. First, likely red states. These are going to be Iowa, Ohio, Florida, Texas, and Alaska. Now, I know that the Democrats just want, beyond all hope to finally feel like they're going to crack through Texas. They're going to crack through Florida again. I think that Texas and Florida are actually on a path, you're on two different paths right now. And maybe Florida will prove me wrong, but I think Florida is trending more red. Well, I do think Texas is trending blue, but I think that the Republicans understand how important Texas is for them. They're going to put up a fight in Texas for as long as humanly possible, both legitimate means and illegitimate means, as far as I'm concerned. So I think that the turning Texas into a true swing state will not happen this cycle. And I think that a true victory for the Democrats in Texas will be just moving Texas to the left of Joe Biden's margin, to which I think that they can do, but we're still sitting around like 6%, 5%, maybe, if that's the case, maybe in Texas. Anyway, going into the likely blue states, put this up on the screen here. We have Minnesota, Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire, and most of Maine. You can see that we filled in the one district there for Trump. Also, they filled in one district over in Nebraska for the Democrats as well. Again, states that are going to be between 6 and 14 points. I think that Kamala Harris will win these states, though, without too much drama. I know that, again, Trump has been finding himself in places like New Mexico recently for reasons I don't understand. He lost that state in 2020 by more than he lost it in 2016, but he's deluded himself into thinking that he has a chance in New Mexico. I do not think he does. This election will come down to the 7 swing states, the ones that remain gray on the map from our previous map there: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. Now, I will say here that I expect all of these 7 to be 5 points or less. I think that that is going to be something that I feel 100% comfortable saying. I don't think that whoever wins any of these states is winning them by more than 5 points. I also do think that the candidate who wins will actually sweep all 7 of these. I really do. I believe that the candidate that wins is going to sweep all 7 of these swing states. I think that the electorate is going to move either completely towards Trump or completely towards Kamala. But let me tell you about where I think it's going to go. We'll put this map here up on the screen. This is my official election prediction. I am predicting that Kamala Harris will sweep all seven of these swing states. Now, before I get into my reasoning why, I just want to put another map on the screen really quickly here. This is the reverse. This is what it would look like, again, if Trump goes ahead and sweeps the seven swing states. I do think that this is a possibility, but, when we're coming down to it really quickly here, this is an election on the margins. So there are, again, probably 60 million, maybe 65 million people who are definitely in the Kamala Harris camp, and then that same number for people who are definitely in the Donald Trump camp. This was always going to be about the people in the middle or the people who were just not sure if they were going to vote at all. That's what this election has come down to because there's a bunch of people who are firmly entrenched in their camp and they were never going to move. And so the question really then becomes is that do I think that the people who were persuadable, which direction are they going and why? So first and foremost, I want to say that one of the first reason that I do think that Kamala Harris will be the person that these in-between voters are going towards. I think there's a lot of Trump fatigue in the world. You know, Trump voters who find this video, right-leaning voters who find this video, they may find that to be laughable or kind of a joke. But, I think sometimes when you're stuck, I think in a bit of an echo chamber, like we find ourselves in on social media, YouTube is a super echo chamber. So is a place like Twitter. You're kind of not really exposed to how many people in this country are truly turned off by Donald Trump, who are truly fed up with Donald Trump, who want nothing more than for him to politically just not be on the stage anymore. He's been around now for a decade. And kind of like the scenario in 2016, where it was potentially going to be Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, nobody wanted that election. Donald Trump was a wild card. He was someone who was going to shock the system. He was the retribution, the rebuke of the status quo. Donald Trump is the status quo now. The Republican Party is in his image. People are just sick and tired of him. They really are. I'm seeing plenty of quotes from new voters talking about how they wanted to vote for Kamala just because she was something different. Trump is no longer the new it thing the way that he's been in the past. He's no longer shocking anyone. We've all normalized Donald Trump now. We know who he is. There's nothing special about it anymore. He doesn't give anyone that shock feeling anymore. He has kind of just turned a lot of more people off as time has gone on. And it's not just people who want to vote against him, it's also people who vote for him. His rallies that we've been seeing this time around, they're just not the way they used to look. He used to pack tens of thousands of people into certain places. Now they kind of look more like this.
Communities for American citizens. We're going to have American people in our communities now. We're not going to let this. You know that these gangs have weapons that are above military grade, and that even the police very tough, very tough. In Colorado, Aurora, you have the same gang, the Venezuelan.
Kamala Harris got a hold of that video earlier today, and she happened to post a side-by-side comparison of when she was in that exact same arena not too long ago. And unlike in Trump's video just now, where they had to actually section off the top of the rafters there because no one was sitting in them at all. Also coming down, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of open seats. Like people are just not quite as enthused with Donald Trump as he used to be. And that was his strength. That was his source of power, was his ability to galvanize his base. And I don't know that they're quite as with him as they used to be. And even if that's a 2% drop off, so you say, oh, well, 98% of people are still with Trump. Okay, but you lost 2% in an election of margins. That matters. It really does. That matters. That is a lot of people. That could be a couple million people we're talking about. Looking back at 2016 and 2020, Kamala Harris is more popular than Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Those elections were nail biters. They really were. I mean, there is no reason to believe that a more popular candidate doesn't actually put Donald Trump at more of a disadvantage. And again, he's not as popular, really, he's not as much of a shock as he was before. Now, the other thing that also I think is worth bringing into attention here is the younger demographic. While Republicans are showing that they are gaining ground amongst, younger men, Gen Z men are becoming more conservative, way more than they are becoming liberal. It's also true that Gen Z women and millennial women are becoming more and more liberal as time goes on. And I think that the Republican strategy has been to go after, men, and we're seeing that it's paying off because Trump is becoming more popular amongst men. But if we're being honest here, it's not really the best strategy. And the reason why I say that is because we've seen in data trends for years and years and years, women are way more likely to vote than men are anyway. And again, younger people in general, they vote at the lowest clip of any demographic period. So their campaign strategy is tailored to the group of people who are least likely to vote. So yeah, you might find a lot of people on Twitter and on YouTube who can't wait to tell you about how much they love Trump and, MAGA this and MAGA that and Trump 2024. How many of those people right now are not going to vote? Say they're going to vote, don't vote. Plan on voting, don't vote. Had every intention of going to vote, didn't vote. That is young guys. Let's just call it what it is. Meanwhile, not only are young women becoming more and more liberal, this was actually pre Roe v. Wade being overturned. And we cannot overlook the significance of that and how that's going to drive out mass amounts of turnout in millennial and Gen Z women. Again, I think the Trump campaign has very much underestimated just how potent of a factor that's going to be on election day. We're already seeing some evidence of that in Georgia. We can put this up on the screen really quickly here, where we are seeing that the female to male ratio for voter turnout is already has a double-digit lead for women over men. If the trends are following the way that we've been seeing them, that would be a huge lead for Kamala Harris if we are in fact seeing the disproportionality of how women are backing Kamala Harris versus how men are backing Donald Trump. But again, if we go back to the polls that we saw out of Iowa just recently, where independent women were up plus 28 for Kamala Harris, then we are talking a massive potential blowout as far as I'm concerned. Now, on top of that fact, Democrats have been outspending Republicans in basically every single swing state, and they have been for months now. That's on top of the fact that they have a much wider ground game. It was reported very early on that Kamala Harris's campaign had way more ground operations going on in Pennsylvania, and North Carolina, and Georgia. Donald Trump had maybe like one or two offices set up in Georgia, while Kamala Harris had over 20. Like they have been on the ground extensively in all these different places. Just over the last few days, they were having like hundreds of thousands of doors being knocked in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The Republicans aren't putting up numbers like that. The Democrats, as far as I'm concerned, they're taking this more seriously. I think Donald Trump has almost become too overconfident in this election. He still thinks he's running against Joe Biden. It's a little bit, if you're a Republican, a conservative person, it should be a little concerning with how cavalier I think Donald Trump has, taken this election. He's not doing anywhere near the number of events that he used to do. I think he just assumed that he was going to win this thing. And I think that's going to come back and bite him in the ass. But the one thing that I think maybe not being talked about enough is the fact that while a lot of people who are younger have been having a little bit of a hard time with the economy recently, you know who's actually not doing too bad in this economy? Older folks. Gen X, baby boomers. Why? Because these are the people who disproportionately own most of the housing here in America. And as the housing crisis has gotten worse for people like myself, millennials and Gen Z, people who already own homes are seeing their equity go up dramatically, seeing their wealth go up dramatically, seeing the price of their homes go up dramatically. They're also the demographics that own the most stocks in the country. The stock market has been doing really well under the Biden administration. The older generation is actually financially really well off under the Biden administration. And as we know, this is also the same generations that vote primarily based on the economy and how they feel about it. And the economy's been working for them. And that's probably also why we're seeing seniors break for Kamala Harris right now in a lot of the polling that we've been seeing. So again, I don't want to like make it sound like this is going to be some massive like 10-point victory across every single swing state here. But I think again, on the margins, there's enough things going right in the direction of the Democrats and Kamala Harris that it just makes sense to me that she is going to win this election. And I do think that she is going to find a way to sweep all 7 of these swing states. As a final note here, I do want to say that, again, I do believe this will be close in the sense that I do think that while I do believe that Kamala Harris will win, I don't think that any one of these 7 swing states will be more than a 5% margin, any of them. And I want to be clear here. It wouldn't surprise me if this actually went the other direction and Donald Trump ended up winning. Now, no one really knows what's going to happen. We're all going to find out very shortly here. But I do think that, again, whoever wins, it will be a sweep either one way or the other. And I think there'll be a lot of great analysis to break down about why the election went the way that it did after we get all the data in from how everyone voted here in the next few days. So I'm excited to see what this turns out. We'll see how accurate my prediction was here. Let me know your thoughts. If you made it to this point in the video, let me know your thoughts. Please comment below. Tell me what you think is going to happen. Do you think my analysis is way far off? Tell me why you think it's way far off. Do you agree? Tell me why you agree. For those who got to the end of the episode here, really appreciate you watching. Please share this episode if you liked it, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you for watching this video of Independent Thought. If you liked the conversation, please go ahead and give the video itself a like, and be sure to subscribe for future episodes on the channel.